The first red flag was the ice bucket. Not the infidelity. Not the lipstick on the coffee mug. Not even the forgotten wedding ring in her gym bag. No, it was the ice bucket. It was sitting in the corner of her office, still half full, slowly melting into a hotel towel that shouldn't have been there. And I wouldn't have noticed it at all if I hadn't decided to leave the party early. I wasn't supposed to be on that floor. The event was happening 2 levels up, under string lights and jazz covers of 2010s pop songs. The building's elevators were packed, and I just wanted a minute. So I took the stairs. Dumb idea. I figured I'd sneak into her office for a quiet moment, grab my jacket, maybe scroll Reddit for 5 minutes before returning to fake small talk with people who think branding is a personality trait. But the door was open, the lights were off, and the ice was sweating. I stood there, just inside the doorway, the hum of the party fading behind me, and I knew, in a way you don't want to know things, that something was off. There was this quiet panic in the air, like the room had just exhaled something it shouldn't have. Then came the sound, a soft shuffle, a click, a whisper. It was coming from the storage room attached to her office, a space no bigger than a walk-in closet. We kept spare monitors in there, office supplies. Once, she showed me a broken ring light someone ordered and never returned. The whisper again. I should have left. I should have closed the door, gone back to the rooftop, and let the story write itself without me. But I didn't. I walked toward the sound, slowly, stupidly, like a man in a horror film who thinks knowing the ending might somehow change it. And what I saw when I pushed that door open, well, that's when the whole illusion shattered. Every word, every kiss, every, "you're being paranoid," they all unraveled at once. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you exactly how it went down. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have. Maybe it was denial. Maybe I thought if I just stood still long enough, whatever was happening behind that door would stop existing. But the sounds didn't stop. If anything, they became more distinct. The kind of sounds you can't unhear. Faint, staggered breaths, a quiet gasp, the squeak of a soul twisting against polished concrete. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And worse, it didn't belong. Not here. Not in her workspace. Lorna always prided herself on keeping that room minimal. Clean for ideas, she called it. I wasn't even allowed to bring in coffee without a coaster. And yet, someone was in there with her. Or had been. Or was still trying to hide. I felt the air shift when I stepped fully into the office. That might sound dramatic, but I swear, it felt thicker, warmer, like I'd walked into a room that had just hosted something intimate and hurried. My jacket was draped over her ergonomic chair, which was slightly turned toward the window, not how she left it. I remember that because she always positioned it directly facing her monitor, obsessively centered. Her laptop was open. Spotify was paused on a lo-fi playlist called Creative Oxygen. And that damned ice bucket still sat in the corner, the hotel towel beneath it now soaked through, a puddle creeping slowly toward the carpet. I don't even know what possessed me, but I walked over to it. I crouched down. Something about it felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with water damage. It wasn't from this building. It had that generic stainless steel look, the kind you see in upscale hotel rooms with too many mirrors and no clocks. The towel, too. It had the embroidered logo of a boutique hotel downtown. One I knew well, because I'd taken Lorna there for our 4th anniversary. My hand was trembling before I even touched the towel. Then I heard it, a whisper, barely audible, a single word. Shoo. I froze. It didn't come from the hallway. It came from the storage closet, the one we never used, the one where we stored backup keyboards and unopened toner. I turned, heart hammering so hard I swear I could feel it in my eardrums. I took a single step toward it, and the knob turned. Someone inside had their hand on the knob, and they were waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't know. For me to speak? For me to walk away? For me to open it myself, so they wouldn't have to? Every instinct told me to walk out, to pretend I hadn't heard anything, to let the story remain a mystery and spare myself the unraveling. But I didn't walk out. I reached for the door, fingers shaking, and pulled it open slowly, painfully, knowing full well that whatever I found behind it was going to stay with me for the rest of my life. There was no scream, no confrontation, no crashing objects or dramatic accusations. Just the slow, suffocating silence that followed after I pulled open the door and locked eyes with the man crouching in the back corner of the storage room, shirt halfway buttoned, trying to look invisible. I didn't recognize him immediately. His face was partly hidden in the shadows, and he was frozen like some wild animal caught mid-step. But then, a beat later, Lorna appeared behind him, hair tousled, blouse misaligned, her mouth slightly open, not in shock, not in fear, but in something that looked an awful lot like guilt desperately trying to remember how to act surprised. She didn't say my name. She didn't even say anything. She just blinked twice, adjusted her shirt like that would somehow rewind the moment, and stepped forward. "Malcolm," she finally whispered, like the fact that I was standing there was the thing that needed explaining. I looked at her, then at the guy. He wasn't some suave executive or her boss's charming husband. No, he was one of the interns. A marketing temp I vaguely remembered from a team dinner. The one who spent 20 minutes explaining why fonts were spiritually political. I think his name was Brennan. Or Brendan. Something millennial and soft. The worst part? He looked just as terrified as I felt. Not because he feared me, but because he feared what this moment meant. For her, for him, for whatever ridiculous fantasy they'd been playing out in that closet. I didn't yell. I didn't punch him. I didn't do any of the things you imagine you'll do when something like this happens. I just stood there, watching the two of them shuffle around like extras caught in the wrong scene. He tried to say something. "Dude," I didn't know, but stopped himself when he realized there was no version of that sentence that could land softly. Lorna reached for my arm, but I stepped back before she could touch me. That seemed to break whatever spell she was under. "It's not what it looks like," she said, because of course she did. And that's when I laughed. Not loud. Not long. Just a short, ugly noise that surprised even me. Because I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was embarrassed. Utterly, stupidly embarrassed. Not just because of what they were doing, but because I had trusted the little details. The excuses. The late nights and silent phones. The new perfume and the way she always showered as soon as she got home. I had convinced myself those things didn't matter. That I was the paranoid one. That she deserved space and I just needed to be more secure. But it did matter. All of it. And now, the truth wasn't coming to me in a dramatic revelation. It was sitting there in the form of a half-dressed intern trying not to breathe too loudly while my wife fumbled to zip her boot. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out. The hallway outside felt colder somehow. Like the building had changed temperature in the last 3 minutes. The music from the rooftop party echoed faintly through the vents, an upbeat indie song playing over polite laughter, completely disconnected from the implosion downstairs. I made it halfway to the elevator before realizing I was still holding the keycard to her office. I almost went back to drop it off. Almost. Instead, I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in over a year. I opened the Notes app, and I started typing. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. It's only 6 floors, but something about those seconds, that quiet hum, the flickering overhead light, the warped reflection of myself in the mirrored panel, made it feel like a descent into something permanent. I kept looking down at my phone, at the half-finished sentence I had typed before the elevator doors even closed. Caught her in the act. Don't feel real. That's all I wrote. No punctuation. Just raw, fractured words, like my brain couldn't handle grammar. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. The idea of walking into our apartment, with the bookshelf she organized by color, the stupid succulent she named Frank, the framed Polaroid of us at Niagara Falls pretending not to be freezing, made my stomach twist. Instead, I wandered. I don't remember where. I think I walked half the downtown loop. Past the late-night falafel place we used to go to after movies. Past the overpriced wine bar where she once cried over a lost promotion. Past everything that used to mean something and now felt like it was mocking me. The worst part was knowing I didn't have anyone to call. My family lives across the country, and the friends I used to be close with had slowly drifted after Lorna became my entire orbit. I had done that, not her. I let people fade because I thought being a committed partner meant pouring everything into one person. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Choose your person and give them the best of you. But no one tells you what to do when they take the best of you and leave it in a hotel towel next to an ice bucket. Eventually, I found myself sitting in my car. Engine off. Cold air leaking through a cracked window. I stared at the building across the street. Not her office. Just a random high-rise full of windows and silhouettes. People living out moments they'd never realize meant anything. I watched a man in a bathrobe step out onto a balcony and light a cigarette. He looked free. Not happy, but free. and I envied him in a way that felt humiliating. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Lorna. Just one word. Please. I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. I just stared at the bubble, the timestamp, the desperation wrapped in minimalism. She knew me well enough to keep it short. She knew if she sent a paragraph, I wouldn't read it. If she apologized, I'd get angry. If she defended herself, I'd scream. But please? That was neutral. That was careful. That was manipulative in its elegance. I started typing again in the Notes app. Not to her, to myself. I listed things I remembered from tonight. Not emotions. Just facts. Concrete things my brain could grab onto. The texture of the towel. The brand of cologne that guy was wearing. The way Lorna didn't flinch when I opened the door. The way I didn't yell. The exact number of ice cubes still in the bucket. 7. I don't know why that mattered. But it did. 7. I finally drove home around 2:30 a.m. The apartment was dark when I got there. Quiet. Her shoes were in the hallway, but she wasn't. I didn't know where she went after I left. I didn't care. I just stood there in the doorway, coat still on, staring at the table where we used to leave each other notes. Real ones. Back when we thought handwritten post-its were cute. There hadn't been a note in months. Until now. There was one waiting on the counter. Folded. No envelope. My name on the front. I picked it up, hesitated, and unfolded it with fingers that felt heavier than they should have. 3 lines. Blue ink. Her handwriting. And a sentence I will never, ever forget. She wrote it like it was nothing. Like what she'd done could be contained in ink and paper and 3 lines of curated sorrow. It wasn't even written on a proper sheet. Just the back of an old receipt from the corner bakery. The one where she used to get those almond croissants she swore were a form of therapy. That detail bothered me more than I'd care to admit. Like she couldn't even bother to grab a clean page to confess on. The note read, I didn't mean for you to find out. It was only supposed to be temporary. I still love you in a way. There's something uniquely cruel about the phrase in a way. It pretends to offer softness while twisting the knife. I read it over and over again. Like repetition might reveal some hidden message, like I'd missed a line or a fold that changed the meaning. But no, that was all she wrote. Not even a signature. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. I just stood there in the kitchen with the refrigerator humming behind me, staring at that slip of paper like it might combust in my hand. The apartment around me looked the same, smelled the same, echoed the same, but everything was different. I noticed things I hadn't in years. A wine stain on the ceiling we never got around to scrubbing. The chipped handle on the cabinet she always said she'd fix. The photo of us in Prague, crooked on the shelf. I remember how we argued about which frame to get. I wanted simple black. She wanted distressed wood. She won, like she usually did. It hit me, standing there, how long I'd been losing her. Not in one night. Not in that storage closet. But in small, calculated increments. A pulled-back kiss here. A delayed reply there. The growing silence in between the safe, automatic conversations. The way she stopped asking me to taste things while she cooked. The way she stopped noticing when I did. I sat on the couch eventually, still holding the note, still fully dressed. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just stared. Not at anything in particular. Just into the space between things. I think that's where it lives, really. The betrayal. It's not the act itself. It's the hollow left behind. The slow unraveling of certainty. The part where your reality starts to feel like a badly written script you don't remember agreeing to. I thought about calling her. I even typed her name into my contacts. But my thumb hovered over the button like it was a trigger. What would I say? That she broke me? She already knew. That I saw through the excuses? She had stopped pretending I didn't. That I wanted answers? No answer she gave would fix anything. So instead, I called someone else. An old friend. Charlie, someone I hadn't spoken to in over 2 years. He was surprised to hear from me. But when he heard my voice, he immediately asked, "Where are you?" Not what happened. Not why now, just where. I told him I was home. He said he'd be there in 20. And he was. He brought gas station coffee and silence. We sat on the balcony. The sky was that pale gray pink that always shows up right before sunrise, and I could feel the fatigue clawing its way into my bones. I told him everything. From the party to the ice bucket to the note. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't offer cliches. And then, after a long pause, he said something that stayed lodged in my mind ever since. You ever think maybe she started cheating after she stopped being scared of losing you? That hit harder than anything she'd written. Because I had. I'd stopped fighting, stopped surprising her, stopped showing up like I meant it. I let our life become beige, the very word I used to describe that night. And maybe she chose chaos over beige. But that still didn't make it okay. Charlie left just before 7. I sat there another hour, the city waking up beneath me, the streets shifting from silence to movement. I still hadn't slept. My eyes burned. My throat was dry. But I wasn't tired. I was alert, focused. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I didn't go to work that Monday. I didn't even call in. I just stared at the screen of my phone until the calendar notification disappeared and let the silence take its place. I knew I couldn't function like normal. Not while my hands still smelled faintly like hotel soap and my mind replayed that moment in the closet every time I blinked. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want rage. I wanted clarity. And clarity doesn't live in the middle of your normal routine. You have to go find it, or make it yourself. So I started cleaning. Not like dusting or vacuuming. No, I stripped the apartment. I pulled everything out of drawers, cabinets, shelves. Every photo, every shared toothbrush holder, every receipt from weekends we once thought were milestones. I wasn't looking to erase her. I just wanted to see what was mine. What was left of me? The strange thing? There wasn't much. I had become an accessory in my own space. My books had been moved to the lowest shelf. My framed sketch from college had been rotated to face the wall. She had called it too visually loud when she reorganized the place last spring. She forgot who I was. Or maybe I forgot first, and she just adapted. I found a box buried under the bed labeled Mal stuff. Just like that. All caps. No punctuation. Inside was a sad little time capsule of things she didn't know what to do with but didn't throw away. My old concert lanyards, the scarf she hated, my grandfather's mug with the chipped rim. I stared at that box for 10 minutes, hand frozen on the lid. It didn't make me cry. It made me laugh. The absurdity of it. The quiet cruelty of turning someone's history into clutter. I realized then that she hadn't just cheated on me. She'd archived me, and I was done living in storage. That's when I opened the laptop and started writing. Not to her. Not to Brennan. Not to anyone. Just to the world. Reddit felt right. Anonymous. Chaotic. Strangely intimate. I didn't write like a victim. I didn't even mention the cheating at first. I just described the towel. The ice. The look in her eyes. I called the post, Things You Notice When You're No Longer the Person in the Room. It was long. Rambling. Half poetic, half pathetic. I figured no one would read it. But they did. And they responded. Hundreds of comments. Thousands, eventually. People who'd been there. People who were there, reading my breakdown during their lunch breaks or sleepless nights. They didn't tell me to move on. They didn't ask for the full story. They just saw me, in a way I hadn't felt seen in years. And something strange started to happen. I began to remember who I was before her. Before the beige. Before the rituals. Before I became someone who stopped asking questions because the answers might rock the boat. I remembered the version of me who drove out to abandoned gas stations to photograph rust. Who used to make short films with a DSLR and a tripod made out of duct tape. Who once got lost in a thunderstorm on purpose because it felt like the world needed to feel bigger for a minute. So I made a decision. Not out of spite. Not out of desperation. Out of something far quieter and far more dangerous. I was going to invite her back home. But I wouldn't tell her what I'd seen in that closet. Not yet. I needed to watch her lie to me again, with a straight face. Because when she did, I'd know everything. And this time, I'd be ready. She came back on Wednesday. Not because I asked. She didn't respond to my last message. But because I left the door unlocked. That was all it took. One small invitation. Invisible to anyone else, but obvious to her. Lorna always knew how to read between my silences. I heard her keys before I heard her voice. That jingle I used to associate with safety. With routine. With someone arriving home to me. This time, it sounded like the prelude to a courtroom drama. And I was already seated at the witness stand. She walked in like she lived there. Which, I suppose, she still technically did. Her heels clicked across the wood floors with that confident, effortless rhythm she always carried. As if nothing could touch her unless she let it. She didn't look nervous. Didn't flinch when she saw me sitting on the couch, still in the same hoodie from the night before. The one with coffee stains on the sleeve and a hole at the cuff I always meant to sew. She didn't ask why I hadn't gone to work. She didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she gave me a performance. She took a breath, soft, intentional, rehearsed. Then she tilted her head and said, "We need to talk." Not "I'm sorry." Not "I messed up." Just those 4 words, like an opening line in a play we both knew the script to. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. She sat across from me, but didn't meet my eyes. Her purse stayed on her shoulder. That was the first tell. Lorna always took off her bag the moment she stepped inside, like she couldn't breathe until it was down. This time, she wore it like armor. I waited. "I haven't been myself lately," she began. "This job, the pressure, the hours." I held up a hand, and that stopped her. Not because she respected it, but because it didn't fit the choreography she'd prepared. "I know," I said quietly. "About Brennan." That was the first crack. A twitch of the mouth. Barely visible, but there. Then her eyes dropped. She didn't ask how I knew. Didn't deny it. Just let the air fill the room like a flood that neither of us were going to stop. "I didn't want it to happen," she whispered after a long pause. "It wasn't planned. He was just there. And you weren't." That sentence hung in the air like a loaded weapon. "I wasn't what?" I asked. She finally looked up. Present. Curious. "You stopped asking about my life. You stopped challenging me. I felt like I was disappearing, and you didn't even notice." I should have been angry. I should have thrown something. But I didn't. Because I remembered the box under the bed. Labeled Mal stuff. She was right. I stopped being part of her world and quietly folded myself into a background character, hoping she'd still notice me from time to time. And when she didn't, I told myself that was normal. That all couples fade. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen, maybe to put something down, maybe to get distance. But I followed her, not with my body, but with my words. "I saw you, Lorna. That night. In the closet." She froze. No dramatic gasp. No denial. Just a stillness so complete it felt like the room itself held its breath. She turned around slowly, her hand still resting on the fridge handle like she needed to hold on to something cold. Her lips parted, then closed. I waited. And then she did something I wasn't prepared for. She laughed. Not hysterically. Not cruelly. Just a short, dry exhale that was more sadness than humor. "Of course you did," she said. "Of course. You always notice the things I think you've forgotten." I didn't know what to say. That line, it was beautiful, tragic, honest, and somehow, it made everything worse. Because in that moment, I realized something that rattled me to the core. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was grieving something she had already let die, and I was the one still trying to resuscitate the corpse. She walked past me, lightly brushing my shoulder. "You don't need to forgive me," she said. "But please don't hate me. I don't think I could survive that." I didn't respond. Because I didn't hate her. Not yet. But I hated who I had become for her. And that was a much harder thing to walk away from. She left without asking me to stop her. No tears. No drama. Just one last look over her shoulder before the door clicked shut, sealing the silence behind her. I stood in the same spot for what felt like an hour, barely breathing, staring at the place where she'd been standing. And then, I exhaled. Not a sob, not a breakdown, just breath. Deep and full in mine. I didn't touch anything for a while. I let the quiet stretch. The apartment still smelled like her perfume, the one I used to love and had slowly stopped noticing. But now I noticed everything. The way the sunlight hit the counter, the humming of the fridge, the ache in my spine from hours of holding my body like a clenched fist. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was in the room again, not ghosting through it. I made coffee, just for me. I used the chipped mug from my grandfather that she never liked, filled it to the brim, and sat on the balcony wrapped in the blanket she always called too scratchy. The city was waking up beneath me. Horns, footsteps, the occasional dog bark echoing between buildings. I watched it all, not as a man who had just been broken, but as a man who had survived something that could have destroyed him, and didn't. Later that day, I took everything from that Mal stuff box and laid it out on the living room floor. One by one, I went through it. I kept what mattered. The mug. A photograph of me holding my first camera. The dumb little frog keychain she once said was too juvenile, but used to make me smile when I saw it in my coat pocket. I let go of the rest. Not angrily. Not bitterly. Just peacefully. Because it didn't serve me anymore. And I was tired of carrying dead weight. I didn't hear from her for a few weeks. No texts. No calls. And then, one morning, I got a message. Simple. "I hope you're okay." And I was. Not healed. Not whole. But okay. And that was enough. I started walking again. Started sketching again. Started waking up without the sinking feeling that something was rotting just out of view. I joined a film group that met every Thursday in the back of an old bookstore. I didn't tell them what happened. I didn't need to. I just showed up, week after week, camera in hand, quietly rebuilding. A month later, I posted one final update on Reddit. Not about her. Not about betrayal. Just a photo of my chipped mug, filled with fresh coffee, sitting on the edge of my window ledge at sunrise. I titled it "The Morning After the Storm." No context. No tags. People still found it. And the comments poured in. Looks like peace. You deserve this. That sunlight feels like a second chance. And it was. Because not all endings are explosive. Some just arrive gently, on a quiet morning, with coffee in hand and no ghosts in the room. And somehow, that's the best kind.